I used to think Los Angeles was just a giant parking lot with better sunsets. That idea cracked one warm morning in Echo Park. A neighbor's sprinkler ticked like a metronome, and the air carried this soft toast smell from the bakery by the lake. I walked down for coffee and watched the swan boats drift like slow ghosts across the water. A kid tossed bread at a duck and missed by a mile. His dad shrugged as if to say, "That's fine, it will figure it out." I like that. A city that assumes you'll figure it out. The guy at the cart handed me a paper cup, so hot it made me shift the cup from palm to palm like a little dance. "Careful," he said, and I nodded like we were old friends rehearsing a line. I took the bus toward Los Feliz, sitting by the window because LA belongs to windows. They are the only way to take in the long, gliding blocks, the shop names that read like short poems: Sunset Nails, Family Donuts, Lucky Laundry. The driver had a radio voice and sunglasses that made him look like he kept secrets for a living. At a stoplight, he said, "You're early for the heat. Go climb a little before it arrives." He meant Griffith Park. I hadn't planned a hike. I had a laptop in my backpack and a list of things to do. The light turned green, and the city rolled forward like a calm river. I thought about the list and about the voice on the bus, steady as a piano chord. Go climb a little. So I did. I got off, walked past the row of tiny dogs with big personalities, and stepped onto the trail. The dirt was the color of toast. The brush smelled clean and dusty at the same time. On one switchback, an older man was flying a kite shaped like a stingray. The line hummed in the breeze. He gave me a nod, a silent hello. I stood there watching the kite tilt and sway. "Try," he said after a minute. His voice had the soft rasp of someone who knows better than to hurry. I took the line. The kite dipped and shivered like it could taste my nerves. "Relax your wrist," he said. "Let the wind do the work." I loosened up, and the kite rose, smooth as if it had forgiven me. We didn't talk much after that. We just watched the stingray breathe. On the way down, I passed a tunnel under the road where a sax player practiced long notes. They drifted out into the sun and warmed the concrete. A runner clapped once when he finished a phrase, and the sax player gave a small salute without stopping. Behind the observatory, the city spread out like a messy desk. Papers everywhere, coffee rings, a few ideas that might change your life. Somewhere beyond the haze, the ocean waited with its own patience. I felt a tug toward it. Not a big tug, just enough to loosen my schedule. Back at street level, I found a shady bench and handled the practical stuff. Emails, a landlord reminder, the kind of chores that pinch the day into dull shapes. I answered what needed answering. Then I drank water from a warm bottle and watched the parade of outfits and errands and tiny dramas walk by. A guy tried to balance a stack of pizza boxes and a bouquet at the same time. He succeeded for 4 heroic steps. When the top box slid off, a skateboarder caught it with an easy swoop and handed it back without breaking speed. They didn't say thank you or you're welcome. It was cleaner than that, just a quick repair between strangers. That tiny exchange made me feel strangely brave. I kept walking, letting the streets choose. In Los Feliz, I wandered into a bookstore that smelled like dust and peppermints. The clerk had a pencil tucked behind his ear and a tattoo of a small ladder on his wrist. He pointed me toward a shelf labeled California Essays. Not too serious. I bought a thin book with a beach on the cover. The clerk wrapped it like a gift and said, "A city is a book when you're ready for it." I slipped it into my bag and stepped back into the light. A breeze came up, warm as a held hand. The driver had been right about the heat. It was walking toward noon, slowly and confidently. I turned west, toward the bus that would carry me into the day like a little boat on a long, complicated lake. I didn't know where I was going next. That felt like permission rather than a problem. Somewhere behind me, the sax player held a note that sounded like a ribbon smoothing itself out. And for no good reason. I smiled and kept moving. I got off in Koreatown because the sign on a corner grocery said cold soba, very good, in chalk, and I liked the honesty of that. The noodles were firm and cool, the broth faintly sweet. The ceiling fan made the napkins flutter like they wanted to be birds. Outside, a man in a bright orange shirt spun a sign for a mattress sale like it was a baton. The sign read Sleep City, and he looked like the mayor of it. He had headphones on and a grin that made you root for him. I stood there watching the loops he carved in the air. He noticed and twirled the sign under one leg, then around his back, then laid it on his palm like a tray. I clapped a little too loud. He laughed and bowed, then tossed me the sign. It was heavier than it looked and wanted to leave my hand immediately. He stood behind me and guided my elbow. "Keep your moves small," he said. "Let the weight do the show." When I finally swung it in a clean circle, a couple passing by gave a gentle cheer, as if I had just learned a new word. I felt 10 years younger and exactly my age at the same time. I drifted into a record store where the air smelled like cardboard and hope. A man in a Dodgers cap flipped through used vinyl and told the clerk about a live album that saved his first breakup. The clerk nodded in a priestly way. I listened to a slow soul track on the listening station, the kind that makes the afternoon put on sunglasses. The clerk slid over a sticky note with the name of a taco truck written on it. "If you're heading west later," he said, "this place is parked near the beach. Real good pastor." I tucked the note in my wallet like a promise. On Vermont, the heat finally arrived. It felt like walking into a bakery oven, warm, fragrant, absolute. I stopped at a tiny shop selling fans, phone chargers, and lucky cats with waving paws. While I waited for my phone to gather strength, a small dog trotted in with the entitled swagger of a regular. Cream-colored, curly, and wearing a blue bandana with tiny pretzels printed on it. The clerk said, "That dog has been visiting all morning. I call him Pretzel because of the bandana." The dog looked at me with the seriousness of a judge, then leaned against my leg like we had made a plan together. A number on his tag belonged to someone named Lila. I called. A woman answered in a rush, relief spilling into her voice. "I'm at work in Santa Monica," she said. "He slipped out with the delivery guy. Can you meet by the bluff at 6? I told her yes before thinking about the distance or the traffic or anything. Pretzel sat down like he had hired me as his driver. We stepped back out into the brightness. Sidewalk vendors turned piles of fruit into neat rainbows. A teenager tuned a battered guitar near the subway entrance, playing that same 3-chord loop that tries all afternoon and never gives up. I bought a bottle of water and shared it with Pretzel, who drank in quick, grateful licks. We walked to the bus, and I took the seat by the window again, because now the day had a direction. I had a passenger with curls and a mission in his eyes. The bus sighed into motion, and the streets began to slide. Little signs, optical, copy, Taylor, flashed by like index cards. At a light, a woman selling flowers lifted a sleeve to wipe sweat from her forehead, then smiled anyway. Pretzel pressed his nose to the glass each time the door opened, as if sniffing the next chapter. I rubbed his soft ears and told him we'd be there by 6, and the words sounded true in my mouth. We reached Santa Monica early, because somehow the city decided to be kind to us. The marine layer had rolled in like a soft gray blanket, cool and quiet. It took the sharp edge off the afternoon and turned the streetlights into small moons. We sat in Palisades Park under a palm that leaned a little left, as if it were listening. Pretzel watched the passers-by with calm interest, suggesting he had seen every type of shoe Los Angeles offers. I read a few pages from the thin beach book and felt efficient about it. At 5:58, a woman hurried across the grass in scrubs, her hair looped into a knot that had surrendered hours ago. "Pretzel," she said, with a wave that was half hello, half apology. The dog blurred into motion and landed in her arms, a curl-covered exclamation point. She thanked me 3 times, then once more, softer, like the last chord of a song. She tried to offer money. I shook my head, and she tried again with a coffee card. I took that because refusing twice felt rude, and because coffee is really a way of saying we're all just trying. She pointed toward Ocean Avenue. There's a truck on Bicknell, best pastor in the neighborhood, she said, as if the city itself were continuing the sentence the clerk had started in Koreatown. I walked that direction, following the glow of a string of lights and the smell of pork and pineapple doing their good work on a flat grill. The line moved with the slow optimism of a weekday evening. A surfer with damp hair told a pale tourist, "You picked the right one," like a proud host. I ordered 2 tacos and a lime soda. The man behind the window asked about heat level. I said, "Medium," which in Los Angeles means prepare your soul. He laughed and handed me a small paper tray crowned with green and red salsas that looked like little flags. I took the first bite standing under the open sky. The flavors clicked together the way puzzle pieces snap when you're sure they don't belong. The salsa was bright and a little rude, the pineapple slices crisp from the grill and sweet as a good secret. I leaned on the truck and let out a small noise that embarrassed me because it sounded like I had never eaten before. The surfer grinned like he had been waiting for that sound. I nodded in surrender. After dinner, I walked to the sand. The Ferris wheel at the pier turned in slow, sure circles, its lights pulsing through the fog like a heartbeat with sunglasses on. I slipped off my shoes and let the edge of the ocean touch my ankles, cold, exact, friendly in its own icy way. The lifeguard tower stood quiet like a chalk drawing. Somewhere out on the water, a foghorn gave a single friendly complaint, and the city answered with distant breaks and a laugh from someone I couldn't see. I sat on the low wall and watched a man teach his daughter how to balance on a skateboard. He crouched beside her, hands open but not touching, ready to catch and also ready to let go. The girl's face held that earnest concentration children reserve for difficult joy. When she rolled 3 feet alone, he didn't cheer. He just smiled wide enough to split the fog and said something I couldn't hear. The girl nodded, solemn and proud. It felt like the day's theme. Hands open, not grabbing, letting the wind and wheels do the work while you guide your wrist, your elbow, your fear. On the bus ride home, I pulled the book from the bookstore and read a page about taking the long way on purpose. Pretzel's hair still clung to my shirt like tiny commas. I thought about the man with the sign, the kite shaped like a stingray, the sax player filling a tunnel with slow light, the surfer backing the truck like a hype man. I thought about the driver whose sentence started the whole day, "Go climb a little," and how several strangers had kept completing it. "Go wander a little. Go deliver a dog. Go eat the good taco." The city had linked more gently than I remembered, not just traffic and errands, but hands passing pizza boxes and notes and dogs, one to another, without a speech. Back in Echo Park, the sprinklers had gone to sleep and the bakery was dark. My apartment window caught a stubborn blue leftover from the wheel on the pier. I put the book on the counter like a souvenir and poured a glass of water like a promise. The day had stretched long, but not in a way that tired me. It felt elastic, like it could hold one more small surprise and then another. If Los Angeles is a giant parking lot, it's one where a saxophone echoes under a bridge and someone waves you forward with a kind hand, where a kite that looks like a fish teaches you to loosen your grip, where a dog in a pretzel bandana sits beside you on the bus like you've both been traveling together for years. I fell asleep hearing the soft city hum through the open window, a low, generous sound. The last thing I thought before dreaming was simple and calm. Tomorrow I'll climb a little, again.